Daniel Defense M4A1 RIII Tabletop Review and Field Strip coming up next on GBGuns. Got this rifle in for a magazine article that I'll be writing, but I thought I'd give you guys a bit of a peek at it. If you're like me, you've probably been plenty satisfied with other ARs and wondered why these things cost so much. In just handling this to start, I can see some of the things that make it so popular, other than, of course, video games. I know there's a lot of folks out there who don't know the rifles, but do know video games and buy a Daniel Defense because that's where they've seen it. This, however, I would argue, is a little more than your basic AR. Starting up front, we have a 12.5-inch handguard that's a little unique. More on that in a second. And if you're wondering why there's so little barrel protruding from a 12.5-inch handguard, that's because this is a 14.5-inch barrel with a pinned and welded flash hider. As you can see, this rifle is used, as tends to be the case with loaner guns for media samples, things like that, especially high-demand popular companies like Daniel Defense. This handguard is a unique system that is completely free-floated using 6 bolts back here holding on to things, and if you're seeing that extra substructure in there, that's because the lower part of the handguard is removable for an M203 to be attached or other underbarrel setups. As a result, we've got a government profile barrel, as would need be for an M203 like what I carried in Afghanistan. We have a mid-length gas system on that 14.5-inch barrel, which should make it a pretty soft shooter. And as you can see, M-lock all around. This thing's already set up for a sling, which is great. And online it said adjustable gas block. I cannot see. I do not think that this particular model has an adjustable gas block. This handguard is beefy and large in diameter compared to modern trends or current trends, but I think that's because they want to be able to fit a 203 underneath there, and that requires a bit of real estate. There's QD points on this handguard that are quarter rotation. You can see there's a little indentation in there. And this interesting attachment setup. It's T-marked all the way down. As we get to our receivers, upper receiver, I don't know if there's anything particularly unique about the upper part. However, the lower, you might have noticed, is completely ambidextrous. And this is something that I absolutely love. Being able to use the right hand or firing hand to control your bolt for lock, open, and release is excellent. It prevents you from having to come off the gun like you do normally to pull on the charging handle. I think that's pretty cool. We've got, they say, a proprietary flared lower. That flare looks to me to be pretty normal like everything else, but of course with these ambidextrous controls it's probably proprietary. The pistol grip, I've noticed, is well, more vertical, and you see there's no seam here because the pistol grip continues in to be the trigger guard. That's all one piece. But this does feel to be a little bit more vertical of an angle than is standard, which I appreciate. It's a lot more comfortable to shoot that way when you're either shooting chest forward, like if you're wearing plates, or on the bench where you've got a shorter length of pull to the trigger than you would if you were standing. Up top we have Daniel's own ambidextrous charging handle, and coming to the back is the furniture. And I remember quite strongly from when I worked at a range that had one of these as a rental, this furniture and how comfortable it is. This rubber texturing overlay that is on the stock and the grip is great, and this toe angle here on the stock might work for some situations, not all. And notice that in the bag is included a different heel to it. This, when put on here, would facilitate possibly a little better for rolling into the shoulder, but also kicks it out a little bit more through the middle here, depending on what you tend to wear when you shoot. Kind of an interesting setup there. Next, we'll pop the pins and take a look inside this thing. I separated the upper and lower off camera because YouTube's been giving us holy hell for all kinds of things that it thinks are gunsmithing, despite them being basic user level maintenance. I do also want to say that I looked up and saw that this is an H1 buffer. Interesting to have that with the mid-length gas, though maybe on the 14.5 that's what's needed. At my publisher's media day, the first time I shot one of these was actually the SBR version of it, and I was really impressed with how soft shooting it was, and that I was able to freehand stand upright, shoot at a 12-inch plate at 200 yards and hit without issue. Notice here the fencing around our safety is a little bit, or sorry, our magazine release is a little bit of a different contour. This also seems to be sticking out a bit thicker, and I noticed once I popped those pins that our ambi controls here are beefy. That is nice and strong, looks like it's going to last for a while, and was definitely a severe cut from the receiver to fit all that in there. We also of course have an ambidextrous magazine release. Those are much mechanically simpler to facilitate. And you see we've got plenty of room inside there for a third pin if need be. Next we'll take a look at our bolt carrier group, which I'm assuming is going to be rather dirty. And dirty it is. This is the life of media guns. If you guys hadn't seen, nicely staked bolts there to hold our gas key on. We'll take a look inside and see how the constructors, wow, the bolt is constructed. Something to pry in there real quick. I'm curious while I'm pulling this apart, and you guys have time to comment, how many of you are Daniel Defense owners and what it was that inspired you to get one. If it was just a brand that you knew because of video games, or if there was a particular feature. Because this to me so far looks like a very nicely built gun. No criticisms on it whatsoever. I just previously hadn't. That is good and stuck in there. Filthy. Come on. I'm gonna have to bang this. And there's our nasty firing pin. This thing is filthy. Cam pin doesn't even want to turn. There's so much gunk built up on this thing. I guess I'll come off camera again. And that was good and stuck in there. Good thing I took a look at this before taking it to the range, because I think this could probably use a bit of a cleaning. Anyways, I like the feature set that's on this so far, and we do have the dual rubber and spring inside there. That's something I know a lot of people are always curious about. I've heard folks say you need to use it. Heard folks say only use one. I've seen guns run fine with none. It all, I guess, depends on how heavy of a use the gun's going to go through. But nice build. It is certainly not a inexpensive build, which explains that it's not an inexpensive gun in the first place. These ambi lowers, and you guys have seen me use similar styles from other manufacturers, are totally worth it. If there's something you're thinking about spending a little extra on and not sure on, an ambi lower that has complete bolt control for your trigger finger, I think is excellent. But that's just as a guy that does training and things like that. If you don't, then don't worry about it. But interesting build here with the brown handguard and black receivers, but it does add some color, and you can certainly see from the copper, that's that blue tint in this flash hider, that this thing has seen a few rounds before it made its way to us. We may or may not be showing you a shooting impressions video of this when we go to do our testing for the magazine article. As far as full specs and things like that, and what this is like after a high round count, you'll just have to wait for the magazine article. Check the video description. Once that publishes, I'll put a link to it as to where you can find yourself a copy. I think in the meantime, I'm going to give this thing a good scrubbing. Thanks for watching. Just a little bit extra I wanted to show you guys as I got this thing wiping down. Interesting wear patterns. I know this is something that a lot of people like to geek out over or get concerned over. Here's the charging handle, and you notice that side has lost a lot of the anodizing. Now, this type of wear is not ever anything to really be concerned about, but it is interesting, showing that it's dragging strongly on the right side and not on the left side. But that might have been the previous user. This is a used gun. I don't know who or how it was used previously. For that much use on the charging handle, you'd expect to see more use on the bolt carrier. However, as you guys can see, the coating on this carrier has lasted quite well. We don't have a lot of drag on the rail beyond normal stuff. I mean, I've seen much worse than this on several other rifles. Definitely some marring back here from interaction with the hammer, but I also noticed how brightly that nice chromed carrier is on the inside there. There was some serious mud of carbon in there. Somebody must have been using that frog lube or those similar products. I'm personally not a fan of them because they turn carbon into mud and make a mess. Our firing pin came nice and clean. And then back to our bolt itself, you notice there is practically no wear whatsoever on this bearing surface. This diameter here, this ring, is what the bolt rests on and where any friction between it and the carrier would be provided would happen. So that was pretty nice. And then yet the cam pin has a surprising amount of wear on it. And in weird spots, we had coating removed there, and then our usual curve only on one side, not the other, which tells me that maybe someone just never rotated this cam pin or kept it always facing the same way. There's no mark on top. Some people that want to keep the wear universal put a mark on top as to which direction is forward, but this does not have that. I took a look inside the upper receiver. It's not practical to try to show it on camera here, but the cam pin itself seemed to be making no contact with the upper receiver, so everything is good and solid there. And then one other little bit I wanted to toss in here, especially considering how many, I guess you could say, non-serious shooters we hear about owning these Daniel Defense rifles. I think they took that into consideration because this manual is probably the most in-depth manual I have ever seen. It really, really goes into detail, covering a lot of bits about the AR and explained from people who understand ARs, not just build them. So hats off to Daniel Defense for an excellent in-depth manual that covers pretty much anything that an AR user or owner is going to encounter at some point in their experience with the gun. This isn't a basic like load it and shoot it manual. This really does cover quite a bit. Alright, that's it for the M4A1 RIII. I'll get it together. We'll be testing this, and as I said, I'll let you guys know in the comment section when the magazine article publishes. Thank you for watching.